Welcome, everybody. This is NKBA, and you are here for the Generational Trends in Home Improvement Projects with Haley Gray, who is an account executive with Home Advisor, and Dan DiClerico, who is home expert and smart home strategist, also with Home Advisor. So if you're ready, Dan and Haley, let's get started. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Debbie, and welcome everyone. Super happy to be able to do this presentation today on generational trends in the home improvement project space, and also that all of you have hopped on for the CEU. So again, welcome. I'm Haley Gray. Debbie, you can switch to the next slide. So I oversee our partnership here at Home Advisor. NKBA is a fantastic, long-standing partner of ours, fantastic to work with, and I love meeting the pros that are in the network. I started here in 2016 and have worked on both the homeowner and contractor side. Two very similar, but two very, very different worlds. So it's just been thoroughly exciting experience for me. Debbie, you can go ahead and move on. So some things that we want to cover today. First, we want to go over what Home Advisor is and kind of where we're at here in 2019. And then also going into the NKBA partnership and what you guys receive as members. Next up, I'll toss it over to Dan for a generational overview, the trends that we're seeing, and then some takeaways. And finally, we'll open it up for question and answers. Okay, so what is Home Advisor? So we are the leading marketplace digitally to connect homeowners to contractors. So actually, kitchen and bath remodels are two of our biggest categories, with over 650,000 service requests coming in just for those two categories in the past year. We currently have over 200,000 contractors in our network. I will say again, NKBA is a great partner. The pros that we do have in your association seem to be really doing well on the platform. So it's really exciting to see that year-over-year growth, and just as we continue to expand in this space, that NKBA is also doing the same. You can go ahead. So as an NKBA member, you guys receive a 10% quarterly rebate. So whatever you spend with us, we're going to deposit 10% back into your account. That's something NKBA negotiated on your behalf a while ago. And so if you're not sure, if you are a member with us, if you're not sure if you're getting that 10% quarterly rebate, feel free to shoot me an email. There it's hgray@homeadvisor.com. And then also for you guys being on the webinar, if you're not already using us and you want to check us out, we are doing a limited time offer for you if you do enroll within the next 30 days to receive an additional $100 in free leads. And then finally, just last note here, we're going to be at IBS and KBIS, and we would love to see you guys. So if you can swing by our booth or join us, you're all invited to our VIP event on Wednesday, February 20th. That's going to be at the Lily Bar and Lounge inside the Bellagio. So again, message me for details, but we would love to see you all there. And with that said, I'm going to toss it over to Dan.
Okay, Dan, you're on.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, I suppose, to many of you who aren't on the East Coast where I am. It's great to be here. Thanks for the intro, Haley and Debbie. Thank you all for joining, and thanks to the NKBA for this opportunity to chat with you all today, sharing Home Advisor's insights into generational trends in home improvement. You know, I think as we all know, understanding the customer is the biggest key to success in any business, but especially home improvement, just given how deeply personal it is. Obviously, not every millennial or Gen Xer or baby boomer is the same, but nevertheless, we are seeing some very clear distinctions and preferences from one generation to the next. So understanding these patterns will, hopefully enable you as professionals to connect more quickly, more deeply with your potential client base. So that's really the goal of today's talk. Before we dive in, I wanted to share, a little bit about myself. As you can see on the slide here, and as Haley and Debbie mentioned, I'm the home expert and smart home strategist at Home Advisor. I like to joke that I must be the only person on the planet with that specific title. But in all seriousness, I think it really reflects the unique perspective that I'm able to share through Home Advisor's many touch points within the home improvement industry. consumers, home professionals, manufacturers, technology companies, and on. As for my background, I've covered remodeling, real estate, products for the home for about 20 years now, working at some of the biggest media brands in the industry. I'd cut my teeth in the shelter magazine category at This Old House way back in 2000. That's when I moved to New York City, where I'm still based. From TOH, I went on to Martha Stewart, and then to Consumer Reports, where I was for the last 10 years before joining Home Advisor back in 2017. I've also written books on residential housing, including The Just Right Home. This was a consumer guide to finding the perfect place to live, published by Workman a few years back, but hopefully still relevant in its advice and observations. So at Home Advisor, I wear a couple of different hats. I'm a spokesperson for the company, representing us at trade shows and industry events, as well as to the media, giving interviews with other print and digital and broadcast journalists. And I create content for our website as well as those of our affiliates on a variety of topics: design trends, new products and materials, navigating the renovation process, and so on. In terms of hands-on experience, I've worked with different remodeling companies over the years, starting with the summers I spent on a roofing crew as a teenager in suburban New Jersey, where I grew up. And I've been through the renovation process a few times now. Most recently, the gut renovation of a 19th century Brooklyn brownstone, which is home to my wife and our 2 kids currently. The project was featured in Architectural Digest, as well as, I should add, in Kitchen and Bath Business, which was great. The AD coverage was very nice, but it was an even bigger honor to have the project recognized by my industry peers at NKBA. That article is still archived at KB Online. If you want to check it out later, you can just Google my name there. So anyways, that's enough about me. I just would end, by saying that ultimately, I think my job is all about making the relationship between homeowners and professionals as positive and seamless as possible through education, through information sharing. And so far in my career, there's been no better place to do that than Home Advisor, since we really do stand right at that intersection of the homeowner and the home professional. So without further delay, let's kind of move into the meat of today's talk. So Debbie's going to be driving the slides here. I also wanted to mention before we move in that there will be time for Q&A at the end of the talk. But please do jump in with any questions. Anytime I speak, I always like the interaction with the audience to be as fluid and as organic as possible. It's a little bit different with the webinar format because we can't see each other, but don't hesitate to write questions in the comment box as we move along. Questions or observations of your own, especially if you're seeing something different out there. I always love to learn from the audience. Okay, so in terms of, let's just do a quick sort of level set here with this overview to kind of look at the 3 generations that we're going to be focusing on. First up, Millennials, born between 1980 and 1994, roughly 73 million strong, which really makes them the largest cohort, compared with about 66 million Gen Xers born between 1965 and 79. For the record, I do sit squarely with this group, so forgive any Gen X bias that may creep up in today's talk. Then we have Boomers, currently aged 54 to 72, slightly smaller in size than Millennials, around 72 million, but still an awfully large cohort. And finally, the Silent Generation, now in their 70s and 80s, and still very, very relevant to home improvement, especially as life expectancy, rates continue to increase for many parts of the population. So our presentation is going to be we've kind of organized it around trends. We do have 10 in all, and these are based largely on exclusive Home Advisor data, which is drawn from surveys of either homeowners or professionals, or in some cases both groups. So as an example, we have our annual True Cost Report, which is based on what homeowners spent on actual completed projects in the last 12 months. It's just an incredible source of data. It's available on our website. So I think it's a great resource certainly for homeowners, but for professionals as well, just to sort of get a handle on dozens of different projects and what they're costing. We also do surveys on aging in place, on homeowner happiness, as well as new homeowners, kind of looking to capture their biggest challenges and pain points. And we, certainly keep up with other outside industry reports. For example, the State of the Nation's Housing by Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies. That's always one of my favorite reads of the year. And surveys from industry groups like HERE and NHB, and of course NKBA. Okay, so without further delay, I'm going to move into our actual to our 10 trends. So trend one, millennials are making a mark. I realize I'm not breaking any news here. Millennials have been the talk of housing and just about all things consumer related for many years now. They've been the leading home buying cohort since 2013, now command more than 1/3 of all purchases, and they're projected to buy more than 30 million homes by the year 2030. Some other relevant stats: 66% of millennials are now married, 52% have kids, and 85% of them are buying single-family homes. So the millennial wave of homeowners is clearly upon us, but more importantly, it's very far from cresting. And we're starting to see what kind of long-term impact this generation is going to have on our industry. So from the home advisor perspective, the biggest immediate effect is just an absolute flurry of home improvement activity. So as part of our annual true cost report that I mentioned, we found that millennials have completed more home projects per household in the last 12 months than any other generation. And they're starting to over-index on certain kinds of projects, including, you'll all be happy to hear, kitchen and bath remodels. In fact, millennial homeowners are twice as likely as baby boomers to tackle one of these projects. So we're going to have more to say on that in a minute. But with millennials making such a big mark, it's worth taking a moment to just sort of better understand their mindset. So we can cue the next slide. So the millennial mind. As the first real true digital natives, millennials are extremely tech-driven, which makes them very fast-paced and really sort of used to instant gratification. Look at their texting habits, or in the workplace, their comfort with real-time messaging platforms like Slack. Everything is very immediate. I kind of like to think of them as the on-demand generation. And I think that's really important to keep in mind when you're taking them on as new clients. If you let a couple of days go by, you may find that they've moved on to the next designer or professional or vendor. It truly is a very fast paced, also highly collaborative. I think this is a factor of social media, a factor of the gig economy, and very socially conscious in ways that are unique from other generations. And I think this is expressed, for example, in their desire for more purpose-driven work and more experiential pursuits over strictly materialistic ones. And a lot of these values are, in fact, finding their way into the home, as we'll see as we move through today's presentation. So we can go to our next slide. So, jumping back into the trends, I mentioned how millennials are much more active in home improvement than other generations. Part of this is simply the fact that they're buying more houses. Home improvement, activity tracks with home purchases. But it's also a matter of the type of houses that they're having to buy. Our true cost report found that most millennials have had to compromise on the size and condition of their starter homes, and many have had to buy older homes in need of repair just to afford homeownership. So this takes us to our second trend here, which is that starter homes have stalled. As I'm sure many of you know, when new home building came to a crawl during the economic downturn starting in 2008, most of the construction that was still happening was concentrated on larger luxury housing, and we're still really feeling the drag from that. as this slide shows. In 2016, for example, about 163,000 small single-family homes were built. So that represented just 22% of all homes, which was down from an average of 33% from 99 to 2007. So if you throw in the rising home prices and interest rates starting to tick up, a lot of millennials are stuck on the sidelines, and those that have managed to get into the market are having to make do with the homes they have rather than trade up. And they're not the only ones. Let's go to our next slide here. So the third trend is the fact that more homeowners are staying put. I can remember 10 years ago, there was a lot of talk about how boomers were staying put, how they were living in their existing homes rather than downsizing or moving into assisted living the way previous generations had. Now we're seeing that millennials are having to do the same, and a lot of Gen Xers are also having to make do with the homes they have. So if we look at the data, the key metric here is the mobility rate, how many Americans are moving house. So in 2017, it was around 11%, which is about half what it was back in the 1980s. And the rate for 20 to 24-year-olds dropped from 34% in 1996 all the way down to 24% in 2017. So there's a lot of factors here, including the aging population and the uptick in homeownership rates over the decades. But challenges around housing are certainly a big part of it. The number of homes for sale in markets across the country was already low a year ago, and the supply has fallen, even further short, particularly in homes priced under $200,000, for which new listings have declined by 12%, according to Realtor.com. What's more, home prices are up 8% year over year. So what's the upshot here? I think it's that many people who would ordinarily want to move to a different home are making the decision to stay put and improve or repair the home they already have. So if we go back to Home Advisor's True Cost Report again, what we learned recently was that 80% of homeowners told us they plan on staying in their existing homes, and half of them are considering a remodel. So, we're definitely seeing a real sort of theme emerging here. Now, as inventory improves, we'll hopefully see mobility rates tick up again. But for now, there are an awful lot of people who are having to stay put. The old formula of kind of trading up every 5 to 7 years is changing, at least for now. So this is certainly a drag on the housing market, but for home improvement, it's a major opportunity. And I think the takeaway for designers and other home professionals is that today's homeowner, regardless of what station in life they're in, are taking a much longer view of their homes. And this is an opportunity for us all to help them think through the best solutions. Okay, we can move on to our next slide. Next slide. Debbie, are you hearing me?
I am. I'm sorry. Where do we need to be?
Oh, sorry about. Okay, just the next slide from
This one?
Oops, it's not.
I'm not sure if you're seeing my screen here.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not moving for you?
No.
Okay, hang on a second, please. I will. We're on trend 4. Is that where you want to be?
Hang on, I'm just. I'm on improving over moving.
Okay. I'm sorry. Let's go back. There we go. Apologize, everyone.
Okay. I'm still seeing trend 3. That's okay. I can move it along on a different file here. So maybe it's an issue on my end. Okay, there it goes.
We're good?
Okay, back on track here.
Thank
So,
you.
improving over moving. Just to sort of briefly unpack the remodeling activity a little bit more. for many first-time home buyers, fixer-uppers are a financial necessity. We found that more than half of homeowners say they'd consider purchasing a fixer-upper home primarily to get a lower price and make the space their own. So again, this just simply underscores the point that there is a high volume of remodeling activity happening out there, but it's a lot about quantity. It's not all big ticket, six-figure projects. So the advice for professionals is that it's really important to find ways to scale your business so that you're able to take on smaller projects in order to grow your client base. It's about taking the $5,000 project, knowing that it will eventually lead to the $50,000 one. The timeline might be longer, given shifts in the economy, but the bigger projects will come eventually. Okay, next slide. Great. So aging in place. So I've alluded to this a few times already. Part of this larger theme of staying put. And it's not just younger Americans who are doing so. The aging in place movement has been building for a while now, but it's really reaching a critical mass due to the aging population. So by 2035, 1 out of every 3 households will be at least 65 years old. And according to AARP, 90% of older Americans plan to stay in their homes as they age, which again is a very different from the old formula where it was, almost a given that at some point they would be downsizing or moving in with a relative or seeking some other form of assisted living. So this is having a big impact on the types of changes that Americans are making to their homes. I mentioned that HomeAdvisor runs another survey every year on aging in place. What we learned this time around is that a lot of homeowners are indeed future-proofing their homes without necessarily connecting these upgrades to aging in place. And not surprisingly, the experience of watching a loved one struggle with age is a major motivator for projects designed to improve ease of living. In our survey, it was things like installing smart thermostats, upgrading appliances, and replacing lower kitchen cabinets with drawers, really anything to make the experience in the home more manageable over the long haul. Now, I know NKBA is very active in this movement, including the alliance with the Living in Place Institute, which Debbie was mentioning at the top of today's program. That certification program is just an incredible resource for designers, for contractors, and other home service professionals. So I would encourage everyone out there to look into it, because the aging in place or living in place, if you prefer, this trend is only going to intensify as more baby boomers enter retirement and start planning their next phase in life. We can move on to the next slide. Trend 5. Okay, we're about to the halfway point here. Our first 4 trends, we're kind of looking at broad demographic changes happening in housing. Going to switch gears now and look at some of the individual features of the home that we see being particularly important to today's buyers, across generations. Starting with the bathroom. In the couple of decades that I've been paying close attention to remodeling data, the bathroom and the kitchen, they always vie for the most remodeled room in the house. Kitchen often has the lead, but our latest data gives the top spot to bathrooms. Nearly 1/4 of homeowners say they're planning for a bathroom remodel in the next 12 months, compared to 15% of homeowners who are planning for a kitchen remodel. Upgraded flooring, cabinets, lighting, shower enclosures, and tile are popular inclusions. And where budget allows, homeowners are also including some luxury touches, the multiple shower heads, the built-in audio speakers, that sort of thing. This slide does include some cost information, about $10,000 for the bathroom, $22,000 for the kitchen. I should stress that these are average costs. At the high end of bathrooms, the number, according to our data, goes up to around $24,000. And for high-end kitchens, we're up around $53,000. But we do always like to provide an average. I think it gives a good kind of starting point for consumers. Next slide, please. So, what's kind of causing this pendulum swing back into bathrooms? I do think it's being driven by millennials, many of whom are starting families and therefore need the multiple updated bathrooms in the home. There's only so long you can give the baby give your baby a bath in the kitchen sink. Something I remember doing. So yeah, definitely being driven by millennials. And we're not suggesting that you start designing homes without a kitchen here. Though I did work with a writer at Inman on an article a little while back, which ended up with the headline, "Could Kitchens Be Extinct by 2030?" And she cited a report from UBS Bank, which argued that a 20% increase in online food ordering sales, so think Uber Eats and Grubhub could eliminate the need for a kitchen within a dozen years. That does seem a little extreme. But I do think we're starting to see a turn away from massive kind of designer kitchens with every possible bell and whistle. We're even seeing more interest in separate kitchens instead of the great room concept that's been popular for so many years and decades even. And again, I think it's the younger homeowner here who would sooner spend on a second bathroom than a luxury kitchen that they might have little use for. In general, there just seems to be greater emphasis on practicality and livability over the sort of home as status symbol idea. At least with our first-time buyers. Okay, so trend 6. Let's talk a little bit about home maintenance more specifically. Bottom line, it's a major pain point, especially for first-time home buyers. There was a separate industry report out a few months back which found that 70% of millennial homeowners are feeling buyer's remorse. This was almost double the amount of baby boomers who said they were having regrets. And one of the main reasons is they underestimate the ongoing costs of home ownership, in particular around maintenance and upkeep. When you're a homeowner, you can't just call the landlord to come and fix things. Home Advisor's 2018 new homeowner survey found a lot of data to support this, and that's what we're showing here on the slide. 60% of homeowners completed more projects than anticipated in their first year. About half of them spent more on these projects than anticipated, and about half of them, more time and more money than anticipated. So the takeaway here, I think, for designers is that all this kind of negative sentiment around home maintenance is sparking a lot of interest in low maintenance products and materials. So, for example, quartz countertops, we've all been watching that trend. Of course, they're beautiful and, can look great in the kitchen, but they also resist stains and dents, better than many natural stone surfaces. I mentioned the years I spent at Consumer Reports. I was in the lab testing these materials and can really attest to their durability and low maintenance. Or look at something like black stainless steel. It's going to be, much more smudge and fingerprint resistant than traditional stainless steel. So I think that accounts for its, growing popularity. Porcelain floors, another trending material where you can get the look of wood, without any of the maintenance concerns. So, bottom line, I think more and more of today's homeowners, again, across all generations, don't want to stress about overly precious materials in the home. And, this comes back to, again, just kind of negative feelings about home maintenance and upkeep.
Dan, I'd like to take a break for a second here. Christy has a question. She says, you mentioned that we will see more interest in the separate kitchen rather than the great room. She's asking, can you talk more about why you see this coming?
Sure. I think there are a couple of things. As I mentioned, I think a lot of it is millennials who perhaps aren't cooking as much. I think that's one piece of it. I think maybe the bigger part of it is just how difficult it can be to design and decorate these kind of large open concept rooms. I think people are, sort of beginning to realize that. Another piece of it is the acoustics. They can be quite quite noisy, these spaces, especially if you have a lot of hard surfaces. I mean, hardwood flooring in the kitchen is become much more possible. So, the challenges of decorating these spaces, the acoustics, the challenge of keeping them clean and tidy. There's a big sort of movement, at the moment of around organization. So I think, and I should stress, it's that we're at the sort of very initial kind of leading edge of this trend. I wouldn't even call it a trend yet, or interest in separate kitchens, but I think there's a little bit of it comes out of a backlash, at least with certain types of homeowners, against the clutter, the noise, and the decorating kind of challenges of the great room. It's a good question. Definitely one I'm still sort of thinking through. Great. Okay, coming back. So just looking at some of the most common service requests coming into HomeAdvisor, you once again see the emphasis on maintenance. In the past 12 months, requests for handyman services have outpaced any other project, followed by electrical and plumbing repairs. So I think, again, the prevalence of repair and maintenance projects, it just reinforces the fact that many homeowners are choosing to remain in and improve their existing homes rather than sell and move into new homes. And it also suggests that they're less interested in doing this maintenance work themselves. And, that's a point I made, and I'll come back to you later. Okay, so back into our trends. Number 7, outdoor living. So low maintenance is a big trend with today's homeowner. Outdoor living is another one. And again, this cuts across all generations. For millennials who've had to settle for small starter homes, it's a way to expand the home's usable living space. For boomers who are staying put, it's a way to make the main floor more usable, more accessible. For Gen Xers like myself, it's another space to come together with family and friends. So a key takeaway for designers is that the primary point of connection between indoors and outdoors is the kitchen. This is something I did on my recent project, opening up the back of the house between the kitchen and the terrace and putting in a glass wall with accordion style doors. It's the crown jewel of the renovation. It really is. And it's just a source of tremendous enjoyment for my family. Looking at HomeAdvisor data, we're seeing a lot of homeowners who want to add outdoor structures off the kitchen that can function as entertaining spaces. It's worth noting here, I just wanted to pause on the fact that the projects are costing a lot more than anticipated. The new deck, for example, homeowners think it's going to cost about $3,000, but it ends up, more than double that, up around $7,000. For landscape installation, they think it might be a little over $1,000. It's 3 times as much, over $3,000. So as professionals, I think helping homeowners manage expectations is vital. It's easy to underestimate how much these projects can add to the budget, especially when structural work is involved. And that's something that I can also attest to personally. As much as I love our kitchen that leads out onto the terrace, I definitely underestimated how much it was going to stretch our budget, given all the structural work that we had to do at the back of the house there. Okay, next slide. The personal touch. Homeowners want it. The outdoor living trend is certainly an expression of this. We're seeing homeowners do some very creative things out there. Backyard beer gardens and very elaborate outdoor kitchens. But throughout the home, there's a real desire to make the place their own. Citing our true cost report, more than half of homeowners told us they'd like to purchase and personalize a fixer-upper home. About 70% say they'd be happier if they could renovate, redecorate, or add on to their homes. So you could certainly argue that this has always been the case. People have always wanted to make their homes their own. But I think circumstances are forcing the latest wave of new homeowners to be especially hands-on. And this does fit in with the larger profile of millennials that I, talked a little bit about earlier. Think of the maker movement or craft beer or 3D printing. There really is a spirit of DIY with millennials that I think probably surpasses previous generations. And we're seeing that in the level of personalization they're looking to bring into their homes. But as discussed, as was saying earlier, they don't necessarily want to be involved in the kind of nuts and bolts maintenance piece of their home. Those projects they're happy to hire out. But when it comes to the finishing touches, they tend to be very active participants. I think this ties back into their preference for experience over material things. And the home is just another opportunity for that, whether it's putting in a climbing wall or a whiskey room, anything that's a pathway to experience and creativity and self-expression. So just to pause here on spending. So I'm talking a little bit here about millennials with personalization, but it's by no means limited to them. Baby boomers who are staying put and Gen Xers who finally have the means to make major upgrades are also intent on personalizing. And it's worth remembering here that the biggest chunk of household wealth in this country still resides very much with these groups, especially boomers. And this is evident in their spending power, which we're showing here, especially compared to millennials. The data shows that baby boomers have outspent millennials on home projects by 32% in the last 12 months. That's again back to HomeAdvisor's true cost report. And what's more, baby boomers plan to spend 77% more on kitchen remodeling projects in the next 12 months compared with millennials. Depending on the age and condition of the home, as well as their own age and economic situation, they're making modifications both out of necessity and a desire for aesthetic and lifestyle improvements. Okay, couple trends to go here. So let's talk a little bit about technology. Again, I'm that's part of my title, smart home strategist. So very near and dear. But certainly one of the paths to personalization is more and more coming through technology. In particular, smart home technology, which is really resonating with all homeowners at this point. Home automation, of course, has been around for decades, but mostly at a niche high-end level. I think the rise of smart home technology in more recent years is moving it more and more into the mainstream. So I was part of the team from HomeAdvisor at CES, at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago. One data point that really stood out was the fact that nearly 30 million smart home products are projected to be sold this year. And that's a 23% increase from 2018. So I think it really does represent a true tipping point for the industry. And we've been seeing the same thing in terms of the volume of service requests, tech-related service requests coming to our pros. So we're sharing some of this data on the slide here. The data at the top of the slide is from a joint survey between HomeAdvisor and CEDIA. They are the leading trade group for home automation. So what we're showing there, nearly 8 in 10 pros say they've gotten more smart home related calls in the last year. And nearly all are receiving service requests at least once a month, if not weekly or even daily. So that's not surprising from the CEDIA set. I mean, that's what they do. But these kinds of technology requests are coming through to all the trades, to home advisors, electricians, to our HVAC contractors. Even handymen are now getting calls to, can you come help install this smart camera or smart thermostat, my video doorbell, whatever it may be. Excuse me. We did run a separate survey of consumers to find out who is embracing the technology. Not surprisingly, millennials have been the earliest adopters, but it truly is resonating with older homeowners as well. If we go back to the aging in place, we're seeing a lot of millennials educating their aging parents about the benefits of the technology. You know, maybe it's adding a smart lock, which is going to be easier to operate for someone with arthritic hands. Maybe it's adding smart lighting with motion sensors to eliminate the risk of trips and falls in dark stairways and walkways and the like. Back to CES, one of the biggest trends that I saw there was the use of artificial intelligence, in particular with sensors that are being placed throughout the home for aging in place purposes. I met with a company from the UK that puts these motion sensors around the home, you know, kind of very discreetly. You wouldn't even know they were there, but they make it possible for grown children or close friends or other caregivers to keep tabs on loved ones from afar. So, you know, for example, if the front door is left open longer than normal, if there's some kind of deviation from mom's normal morning routine, a message will be sent to any designated monitors. So it's a real, you know, I think there's real value there, you know, especially as artificial intelligence continues to mature. It's going to really take smart home technology to the next level. At CES, we also saw a ton of smart home technology in the kitchen and the bathroom, which are, you know, I don't want to say they've been overlooked, but you know, the penetration of the technology has been much deeper in other parts of the home. The kitchen and the bathroom have kind of been the last frontiers. So we've saw, for example, the incorporation of digital assistants, you know, Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, Samsung Bixby. These assistants, not, you know, they've just existed in smart speakers, you know, sitting on the countertop. They're now being incorporated into a variety of products, everything from cars to refrigerators to other appliances, bathroom fixtures like mirrors, shower heads, even toilets with a built-in digital assistant. So you know, certainly look for that trend to continue to gain momentum. Just looking back at the slide, I think homeowners are always interested in resale value, so it's just worth noting here that as awareness and appreciation around smart technology continues to spread, it truly is becoming a major selling point with buyers. So we're pulling some data from Coldwell Banker. They've kind of taken the lead here from within the real estate industry, at least, with kind of trying to measure the impact of smart technology on real estate transactions. So we can see which smart home devices buyers are looking for: thermostats, smoke alarms, cameras, lighting, just to name a few. But again, as I said, I think this is, you know, as the technology matures, it's only going to attract more and more consumers. So the key for professionals is to, first of all, recognize that, but second of all, understand that the value and the use cases will vary pretty significantly from one generation to the next. So you need to be able to talk about them differently depending on your customer. If for the older baby boomer, the emphasis might be on accessibility or you know, ease of use. For the Gen Xer, the appeal might be in, you know, the ability to keep tabs on their teenage kids. For millennials, maybe it's about being able to manage their home remotely, because since they're traveling, they're on the road a lot. But the bottom line here is that smart home technology is absolutely here to stay. I don't think that's a, you know, a debatable point anymore. You know, just given the proliferation of these products, you know, throughout the home, 30 more million this year, but that's on top of the, you know, tens of millions that have already been purchased and installed. So it's really critical that your business is set up to make the adoption of this technology really as frictionless as possible for your customers. Okay, that was a lot on technology, but as I said, that's part of my job, so wanted to give it some room. Okay, we are at the end here, our final trend, and you know, I'm going to kind of bring it back to Home Advisor a little bit here. The point in the slide actually came from a Hanleywood Metro Study webinar that I was listening to, not giving it, I was listening to a few months back. This was on the marketing of new homes to different generations. So according to that study, it was Gen Xers like myself who were most receptive to this idea of having, having access to approved service professionals to help with small and large repairs. It's kind of a turnkey solution that they're being presented by certain home builders. I think the appeal with Gen Xers is probably driven by the fact that we're in that very high intense, very busy stretch of life, raising kids and building careers and becoming more involved in in our communities, so that having this turnkey solution around home services is a real benefit. But by no means are Gen Xers the only ones who are realizing that. The 100 million plus service requests that HomeAdvisor has received definitely cut across all demographics. It's rare at this point that I meet someone who hasn't looked online for some kind of home service help at least once, and more often than not it's become their go-to resource. So yes, I think we're going to see this concept catch on with more with eventually with all homeowners, as the home services space continues to grow and evolve. And obviously HomeAdvisor plans to continue to play a real leading role in that evolution. All right, I'll take a quick breath here. Debbie, any additional questions or comments come through?
Well, there was a comment here about some of the figures that you've been mentioning today may not apply to New York City or Manhattan because they felt that the costs were a little low. So I don't know if you have any insight into that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point. Again, these costs are averages, but I should add that this true cost data through our website or through the app, it is possible to do a local search, to enter in your zip code and get cost estimates for your area. So yes, certainly Manhattan, and again, I can attest to that myself and agree wholeheartedly with that comment that these are going to be low. In New York and in most any metropolitan area, the cost of labor is just so much higher in those markets. So that's a good point. But please, as I said, do take advantage of the very very local data that we're able to provide homeowners as well as professionals through that tool, through the True Cost Guide on our website and app.
There's a couple more comments here, if I may read them.
Yes, please.
Okay, so someone's asking, Michelle, any idea where I would find similar statistics for Canada?
True cost. That's a great question. We might have to come back unless Haley is still there and can. I don't know what data we have on Canada.
Yeah, and we can check with our sister company HomeStars up in Canada and see if they collect that kind of data as well. So yeah, I'll circle back on that, Debbie, and I'll follow up with you, and then if you can relay the message out once I do.
Will do, Haley. Thank you. Okay, Dan, I see a few more things coming in. Haley, I'm going to turn your mic off. Okay, thank you. There's a couple more comments here, Dan, if you have a little more time.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned, I think they live on the West Coast, so they're mentioning Seattle also. Definitely from West Coast, that area is more expensive. So some of your stats today, she says, may set poor expectations for clients. So just to keep that in mind.
Very fair point.
Yeah, also rural Virginia, she's an hour west of DC, similar type of comment. Let's see, and then someone says, having checked to wiring a home for automation, they're very costly and some are not accessible. So I think they might be talking about the smart home technology piece of it.
Yeah, on the smart home technology, I think the advice I I give, certainly to designers is to establish that relationship with an integrator. And here Cedia is a terrific resource. But the same way you have your go-to plumber or electrician, making that smart home professional, part of your Rolodex is critical. And it's to the point I made earlier about just setting up your business so that you're able, when the question comes in, because it's going to come in, I think, more and more, what kind of connected devices, can you put into my kitchen or my bathroom? Those kinds of requests are only going to increase as the awareness around this technology continues to grow. So just being set up, you yourself may not be able to answer every question around the technology, but making sure that you have someone on your team, or again in your Rolodex, who can do that is critical.
And then just a final thought on what we're talking about here. Someone said, is asking, how do you feel about the predictions that there's a growing tech backlash? Someone else commented that people don't necessarily always want their phone involved in every aspect of their lives.
Absolutely true. I think that's where voice control is poised to, if not take over the home completely, that's where this technology is moving. It started with Alexa in 2016, which nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, but most industry and analysts did not see that coming. Did not see Alexa and then Google Home to follow, and some of the others. Did not see the invasion of smart speakers coming. So it's still early days, I would say, with voice control, but it is definitely the dominant interface, and I think part of the appeal is, yes, people don't want to have to reach into their pocket to pull out their smartphone to turn on their lights, but with voice control, you don't have to do that. But in terms of the backlash, I get that. And listen, I myself have some reservations, despite all the connected products that I have in my home. Sometimes I do think twice about it. But I don't know. I just think at this point there is so much momentum behind the technology. We're not at a point where homeowners can't opt out or choose not to have it. There will always be sort of the analog option, but I really do believe smart home technology is, as I said, it's here to stay, and I think it's only going to intensify.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, back into our deck. I can see we're starting to wind down here in terms of time, but millennials use, I think that was just sort of, again, supporting the point about home services and the migration online. Word of mouth is still certainly out there, but I think more and more we are going to see the migration online. So we can move into the sort of final slide here. So again, we hit on 10 trends, and there were even some additional kind of information sandwiched in there. So it was a lot to take in, and sort of covered a wide range of topics. So to sort of wrap things up, we wanted to briefly try to boil it down to 5 key takeaways for home professionals. So I'll just move quickly through these. First and foremost, millennials, it's still a largely untapped market. Keep in mind this generation is on pace to form 23 million new households over the next 10 years, projected to buy more than 30 million homes by the year 2030, as I said earlier. So as home professionals, you just want to make sure you're answering the unique needs of this generation, which at 75 million strong make up nearly a quarter of the total U.S. population. So, low maintenance, as we talked about, outdoor living, technology, these are among the must-haves. Number 2, long-term livability is gaining value. Buyers might not ask for aging in place by name, but they're going to be in their homes for longer than ever. So anything that will add to their long-term safety and overall enjoyment is a plus. This could include aging in place features in the bathroom and other parts of the home. But it's also about flexible layouts that will make it possible for the home to adapt to changing lifestyles. Number three, more bathrooms than kitchens. Again, as I said, the kitchen will always be the heart of the home, but other parts of the home are getting more important, more intention, including bathrooms and outdoor entertaining areas that can effectively expand the home's living space. So make sure you populate your Instagram and and Facebook feed with lots of beautiful pictures of these spaces, along with the showcase kitchen. It's really about creating that kind of total home marketing strategy. Number four, homeowners are making room for personalization. We've talked a lot about this. We're seeing manufacturers play to this trend, I think very effectively, by giving consumers just more and more options, appliances in a wider array of finishes, new choices in countertops and flooring, etc. So for designers and other professionals, giving your clients, your customers as much exposure, to these different options will serve you well. And finally, homes and home services are more tech savvy than ever. So again, smart home technology is a big part of this. Plays very nicely into the personalization theme. But connected technology has the power to really transform the way we interact with our homes. Can make them safer, more efficient, more convenient, more enjoyable. And technology is also transforming the home services industry. The ability to connect with a qualified, pre-screened designer or contractor or electrician in seconds through an app on your phone, it truly is a game changer. And Home Advisor is excited to be, really leading that revolution. And we look forward to working with other home professionals to find new ways to really make homeownership the best experience possible. I think ultimately that's the one mission that we all have in common. So,
great, Dan. This is great information.
Thank you. Yeah, on behalf of Home Advisor, thanks again to Debbie and to NKBA for this opportunity to speak with you all.
Great. Yeah. I do have a couple more questions if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll stop talking.
Oh, no, that's okay. We have a couple more minutes. So Andrew is asking, would you advise when doing a remodel or new construction design to add more outlets to the bathroom and kitchen to allow for the smart home trend in these rooms?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. I would absolutely. I think the most important one is the outlet near the toilet. I think the smart toilet is one of the hottest trends in smart home technology. We've seen them in other parts of the country, other parts of the world, excuse me. But they're really getting popular here. But you can't do it without that outlet near the near the location. So certainly, yeah, that's a great question. I was talking to a designer not long ago who said he simply does not design a bathroom these days, at least a master bathroom, without that outlet in that location. So for that smart toilet, aging in place applications, but they're really appealing to all homeowners across all demographics.
Great. And then there's a final question here. I'll read it to you. So this person is wondering, do your stats represent a complete gut and rebuild, or are they representative of partial makeovers and then with some complete remodels in the mix? This person feels that they are not representative of South Central Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, and Philly when you're looking at a complete gut and rebuild. Any comments on that?
Sure. So yeah, as I said, these were averages. So they do include a very light, low-end cosmetic makeover where there's very little, structural work, all the way up to more involved gut renovations. So the average is just landing somewhere in the middle. So once again, I would just say, try to access the local numbers and see if they conform better, more closely to what you're seeing.
Okay, great, Dan, and thanks to Haley if you're still there. Just wanted to thank both of you so much, and I think we're good. We're at 1 o'clock at the top of the hour, so I'm not really. Oh, there's another question. Can you give us a brief overview of Home Advisor? I'd be curious if other members are having success. So maybe that's a question that they could ask you online through email or something. Would that be okay, Dan?
Absolutely.
And you can message me, hgray@homeadvisor.com, and I'm happy to get you in touch. We have a specific team here for NKBA members that know all about the partnership and can kind of tell you the forecast, the demand out there. So feel free to shoot me a message and I'll get you in touch with them.
Thank you. Thank you both, Dan and Haley, so much for today, and all of you for being with us today. Let's check back tomorrow. See, hopefully you can join us. Thanks again, Dan and Haley. Have a great day.
Thank you all.